Daphne's Spirit Thingy is a scene that was made for the live-action Scooby-Doo film in 2002. It ultimately wound up being deleted from the movie for presumably multiple reasons, one of them being that it was too scary for younger members of the initial test audiences, according to director Raja Gosnell. Because of the removal of this scene, a lot of people in the Scooby-Doo fandom don't really talk about it, since you would have had to purchase the DVD or VHS editions of the film in order to actually see it. The scene in question starts with one of Mystery Inc.'s members, Daphne, being held against her will in an underground cavern located beneath the Spooky Island theme park, after she got kidnapped earlier in the film by the wrestler Zarkos, one of the theme park's main entertainers. Shaggy, another member of Mystery Inc., shows up just in time to see the traumatizing events start to play out. The tension grows even higher as Zarkos operates a device that's similar to a claw you'd find in a claw machine arcade game, only the prize is Daphne's soul, which gets forcefully pulled from inside her chest, rendering her body completely immobile and unable to resist for much longer. Shaggy can only continue watching from his hiding spot as Daphne's spirit is dragged and dropped into a giant vat, which we later see houses the other souls of most, if not all, the patrons still left on the island. One of the demonic creatures that attacked the Spooky Island resort the previous night makes his way towards Daphne's soulless body, and through the use of unfinished CGI, he slowly possesses her until he's taken full of control of her once empty vessel, any signs of the real Daphne's mind completely gone. After speaking to the nearby henchman in a creepy, unknown language, the newly possessed Daphne takes her leave, everyone else following suit. Shaggy continues to have internal struggles with himself on whether or not he should stay put or come out of hiding. Choosing the latter, he runs into the open space, and the scene ends. Scooby-Doo has always had a knack for utilizing its horror premise in such a way that younger viewers can watch it without feeling too scared. This scene in particular is almost unlike anything you'd see from a normal Scooby-Doo episode, so much so that you can understand why it had to be removed from the film's theatrical screening. The film itself was originally going to be rated R, transitioned to PG-13, until finally settling on its official PG rating in the long run. Of course, there was always going to be something left on the cutting room floor that barely managed to push the boundaries, and that wound up being the imagery of Daphne Blake getting her life taken away. The psychological implications are what really make this scene more disturbing, the more you think about them. By this point in the actual movie, Shaggy has witnessed all of his friends disappear one by one. Fred and Velma were both kidnapped by the demonic creatures during the night before, and just before arriving to the scene, Shaggy watched his best friend fall into the caverns after having an intense argument with him. Daphne is the only member of the gang who Shaggy can depend on to help him fix this mess and solve the mystery. But unfortunately, any hope he has is torn away the moment he witnesses her restrained and defeated. He knows that he can no longer trust his friend, knowing that if he tries to communicate with her, she could just end up trying to eliminate him, just as the newly possessed Fred tried to do to him and Scooby earlier. Shaggy's spirit is no doubt broken, his world completely shattered around him as he comes to the conclusion that he's all alone on what is basically the equivalent of a giant haunted house. Bodies all around him walking around possessed. He is fearfully mumbling Scooby's name after seeing the whole ordeal, hanging on to any ounce of hope he has for his best friend still being alive somewhere else. Combined with these feelings of fear, there are most likely some feelings of guilt in Shaggy's mind, given that the last words he really said to his lifelong companion were threats about hurting him in a fistfight. It's as if Shaggy has to slowly start coming to terms with the idea that he can't take back his actions if Scooby is gone forever. A pretty tragic outcome when you realize how comedic Shaggy usually is as a character. Earlier in the film, during Sugar Ray's concert, Shaggy and Scooby initially insisted on going with Daphne when the time came for splitting up and searching for clues. However, she just ends up sending the boys away so she can go off on her own. You could look at this gesture from two perspectives, one being that Shaggy and Scooby are seeking out Daphne's protection, or the other way around. The two are obviously vulnerable and are now looking to have a strong leader to watch their backs, since the actual leader of the gang is now being worn as a suit by a demonic spirit. On the other hand, the guys are well aware of Daphne's tendency as being a damsel in distress, possibly coming to the conclusion that giving her strength in numbers is the best way to make sure she doesn't get taken again. But because she doesn't have said strength in numbers, she winds up getting caught off guard after discovering that Velma is now possessed as well, in another deleted scene. It's unclear if this scenario would have turned out differently if Shaggy and Scooby would have been with Daphne at the time of her kidnapping. Maybe they would have been able to come up with a distraction to get Zarkos away from her, rather than fighting him directly. This is a pretty ironic twist to Daphne's character arc throughout the movie, spending 2 years of her time training to become a black belt, and to prove she has what it takes to stand her ground when faced with danger, when in reality, she's just as likely to be defeated as the other 2 gang members who made fun of her danger-prone tendencies. This scene overall looks bad for her, but ultimately, the payoff to this downfall winds up working effectively when she gets to face her fears of inadequacy by taking Zarkos on in a rematch much later. Overall, I believe this scene represents the feelings of loneliness and isolation. Daphne is feeling lonely because the only friend she has left is forced to watch her get her soul taken away. She can cry for help for as long as she wants, but Shaggy can't bring himself to risk getting caught, realizing that if he did, he would just end up costing both his and Daphne's lives, no matter how much he wants to help her. All screams are eventually silenced, and one voice is added to thousands of others that are crying out in agony. The only glimmer of courage you can gain is left through a compassionate phrase coming from a cheerful, hungry man, and that is, friends don't quit. I will say that Scooby-Doo as a film does flow fine on its own, but if I had the chance to edit the movie myself, I would include this scene in its entirety, and I'm sure that Gosnell himself would feel the same way.